This is now my new favorite wig. I love bangs. Oh, hey! Hi, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, with the Fingerdoo review of RuPaul's Drag Race España Season 1, Episode 7. And before we get started, I've only got one thing to say. Jorge, drink me! Oh, look at you. You finally found the garnish, did you? All right. What is this, more gin? Vodka and soda. When's the last time we had vodka and soda? It's so refreshing on a hot day. All right, let's get to it. As always, we kick this episode off by saying goodbye to the eliminated queen. And although Davima seemed to eliminate herself, the queens were still emotional over the whole ordeal. Sagittaria was still upset about lip syncing against Davima in the first place, no matter how it played out. Carmen was touched by Davima's message saying that the crown was hers and was only more resolved to win the whole shebang. I don't know, she seemed pretty resolved in the first place. Killer said she really got attached to her, although I'm not sure I believe that. Davima certainly didn't seem to get attached to Killer, is all I'm saying. Poopy was feeling that maybe she should have been in the bottom instead of her, and I for one won't agree with her about that. For me, it was a coin toss between Poopy and Davima as to who should be in the bottom, but after seeing Davima give up, I think the right queen landed there, I'm sorry to say. Carmen tried to console Poopy with a backhanded compliment by saying she's proving that she's more than a clown who can't dress well. Poopy loved hearing that. The next day in the workroom, you could cut the tension with a knife as the queens reflected on how close they were to winning, and yet so far away. But before Carmen could give any more backhanded compliments, there was Supreme, looking pretty in pink glitter. I have to say, I think this is my favorite suit that she's worn this season so far. And Supreme didn't come empty-handed. She had the new Samsung Z flip phones with the new revolutionary flexible glass screens. Needless to say, the queens were thrilled. Poopy shared that her mom doesn't know how to use a cell phone. When the battery runs out, she takes it back to the store and says it's done. It's not? Then it was time for the mini challenge. The queens had to put on makeup without using a mirror in 3 minutes. Hell, most queens can't do that with a mirror. Okay, just me. Right away, the queens stepped into their booths and prettied up. While they did, Supreme went around with a GoPro to spy on their progress. When their 3 minutes were up, the queens revealed their makeovers, one at a time. Carmen didn't look too bad, but something tells me she's had to put on her makeup quickly in the dark once or twice before. Just saying. Killer didn't look bad, but she didn't look great. I feel like if she'd got some lashes on it, she would have looked a little better. Just saying. No offense to Poopy, but she looked like she'd put all the makeup out on the counter and just slammed her face into it. She seemed to go for that more is more look, which is what she achieved. Sagittaria didn't look too bad, but then she really didn't have that much makeup on in the first place, so... But it wasn't about how much or how little the queen slapped on. It was about who wore it best, and as far as Supreme was concerned, that queen was Carmen. Here's to her. And winning the mini challenge meant Carmen had an advantage for the Maxi challenge. And what was that Maxi challenge, you ask? Makeovers! I love this challenge the best. It's the reason I have 2 drag daughters, making up friends who want to experience the transformative power of makeup. Or, more than not, just see themselves done up as drag queens. And who were the queens making over? The Madrid Titanes, the first inclusive rugby team in Spain. As the mini challenge winner, Carmen got to assign the partners for this challenge. For herself, Carmen chose the tiniest titan, Carlos. Apparently, she has issues with drag queens who have big arms. Personally, I'm okay with that. Carmen gave Killer Fernando, and Killer was more than okay with that. Hell, I would be okay with that too. Poopy got paired up with Jose, the Green Giant. Poopy does realize she's an evil dwarf, right? Which left Thomas with Sagittaria. She said she was happy about it, but I suspect she was lying. Just me. And with that, Supreme took the Titanes president, Florencio, by the arm and frigged the hell out of there. I'd have taken them by more than the arm. Right away, the queens got down to work getting to know their partners. Poopy and Jose talked about coming out. Jose admitted to coming out only 4 or 5 years ago. Poopy talked about not getting the chance to come out of the closet. Her mom discovered a dress of hers and let her know that she washed it and left it for her on her bed. Even though Poopy said that there was a lot of shame attached to that, it sounded to me like it was her shame. The fact that her parents don't talk about it is being supported by her choice not to talk to them about it. Not that I'm telling anyone how to come out. I never came out. I was already there. Poopy also talked about hiding her drag if she ever brought a guy home with her, which is again a choice and a product of her own shame. Not that there aren't a lot of guys out there that have issues about dating drag queens, but I feel shows like RuPaul's Drag Race are helping to end those issues. So here's to RuPaul's Drag Race, seriously. God bless Jose. I know what it's like to try on heels as a big girl, and when he bent that one heel just walking, my heart went out to both him and Poopy. Carmen's partner, Carlos, seemed to be a natural in heels. So did Fernando. Sagittaria, on the other hand, seemed to be fighting an uphill battle. Not that Thomas was having any difficulty. It was all down to the fact that Sagittaria doesn't sew. Apparently, part of this challenge was making their own outfits, or at the very least, their partners. When Sagittaria realized that giving Thomas a waist with duct tape wasn't going to work, she asked Killer for advice, but I don't think knowing how long it takes to make a leotard makes making a leotard easier. Just saying. And then it was elimination day, and the queens and their titans entered the room in true rugby style. And something tells me it was easier for the queens to learn rugby than it was going to be for those titans to get into drag. Seriously. Speaking of drag, the first order of the day was to shave those tetanes. For Jose, it had been 20 years since a razor had touched his face. Killer got right to fitting a costume on Fernando, but I think that had more to do with sneaking a peek at his goodies. Because Fernando thought what the hip pads and corset were doing to his body was magic, I think a drag queen was born in that workroom that morning. Here's to sexy Fernando. Seriously. As is always the case, the queens gushed over how beautiful their partners looked without facial hair. For some, it was a painful experience. Okay, just Jose, who cut himself more than once, but the real pain was soon to come, at least for Fernando. By that I mean tucking. Even though there was a modesty panel for them to tuck behind, the thirsty queens in the room couldn't refuse having a look at Fernando. From what I could tell, they weren't disappointed. Then it was on to makeup. Some of the queens had an easier time of it than the others. Poopy. Although, I will say this, I was impressed with how much like Poopy Jose looked. So was Jose when he finally got a look at Poopy's work. He was feeling the Pepe fantasy coming to life. In fact, I think Pepe got a little emotional there. Here's the Poopy. And then it was time for the runway. Supreme looked like a transformer in her structured red fantasy. All of our usual suspects were there, Los Javes, Anna Loki, and joining them at the judges' table was the winner of Drag Race Holland, Envy Peru. First down the runway was Poopy Poison and her drag daughter, Pepe Passion. I will say this, their outfits were terrible, but they couldn't have looked more alike if they tried. There was no disputing that these queens were related. Unfortunately, poor Pepe broke one of her heels, but I have to say, you wouldn't have known it, and that's not a read about her walk. Seriously. Carmen and Carla were next, and although they really didn't look alike, they both looked fantastic. This has to be the best proof that learning to sew for Drag Race is invaluable. Seriously. I thought they looked amazing. Here's to Connie and Carla. Carmen and Carla. Connie and Carla was a fun movie, though, I'll tell you what. I have to say, I was impressed with how much alike Sagittaria and Neptuna looked. Even with her sewing issues, I think Sagittaria did a great job on Neptuna. Their outfits may not have looked too much alike, but those mugs were flawless, even if Neptuna's self-exposing breastises kept most eyes from actually reaching her face. Hey, if that was part of the plan, then more power to them, seriously. Last but not least were Killer and Slayer. These two were the winners for me. I thought Killer did an excellent job making Slayer look like her drag daughter. And even though the costumes were far from perfect, I think their similarity was. Clearly, these two were from the same branch of the family tree. I'm not sure what the pop guns were all about, but I didn't care. I just loved how much enjoyment Slayer was getting out of the whole experience. Seriously. And then it was time for the judges' critiques. First up was Poopy and Peppy. For the most part, the judges loved their transformation and their runway despite Peppy's heel malfunction. Envy Peru, on the other hand, did call them out for their outfits being basic. Well, she wasn't wrong. Carmen and Carla were next, and of course the judges all gushed over their eleganza and fawned over Carmen's ability to make both outfits in one night. In fact, Envy Peru was having difficulty figuring out who was the drag queen and who was the rugby player. It's the Carmen. There's that. Sagittaria and Neptuna were next, and this was another pair the judges loved. Even though Neptuna wore something Sagittaria had brought from home, Sagittaria did make her Fifth Element-inspired outfit herself. Good for her. The only complaint came from Ambrosi, who wished there had been more cohesion in their looks. In telling the judges how great this whole experience was for her, Neptuna told the judges about an experience she had recently where she was attacked on the street for being Asian and responsible for the pandemic. She woke up in the hospital 2 days later with 22 stitches in her head, and that being able to be there today and have this experience with Sagittaria meant the world to her. Here's to Neptuna, aka Thomas, and their beautiful strength. Asian lives matter. Don't forget that. Last but not least was Killer and Slayer. Well, the judges loved their chemistry and how much fun they had on stage, but the real showstopper was Slayer's beautiful smile. They all saw a huge similarity between the two queens too. The only negative for Envy Peru was the fact that, well, she could see Slayer's padding through the slit in her dress. Seriously. And with that, the teams retired to the Untucked Lounge, although Neptuna couldn't wait that long to take her shoes off, bless. Back in the Untucked Lounge, Killer thought that it would be her and Carmen in the top, leaving Team Sagittaria and Team Poopy in the bottom. Sagittaria didn't care because she was happy to have had this experience with Neptuna. Then, Killer put her foot in her mouth by telling Sagittaria that she should be in the top 3. Well, Poopy just loved that. She immediately called Killer out on saying she should be the one to leave. Of course, Killer backpedaled as fast as she could, but the damage was done. No matter what she said to defuse the situation, Poopy felt that her backtracking to save face didn't make sense, and I, for one, have to agree. Also, I agree that Poopy was the worst this week, but not for lack of trying. Seriously. Back on the main stage, it was time for my favorite part of Drag Race, the semi-finalists talking to their baby pictures. I'm sorry, but I hate this. It's always the same, and I'm not going to talk about it any more than to say tears were shed, and it was all a rich tapestry. Cheers to everyone. And then it was announced that Carmen was this week's winner, and that she was the first finalist in the season 1 of RuPaul's Drag Race España. No surprise there. What was a surprise was that the 3 remaining queens would have to lip sync for their lives. Needless to say, everyone was gagged. For the most part, this was a good lip sync. I don't know how it would have gone if they'd all been wearing different outfits, but you couldn't deny the eye catchers were Sagittaria and Killer. Well, and then Poopy took her basic outfit off to reveal, well, a less basic one underneath, and went in with her lip sync. I have to say, I was impressed. Killer and Sagittaria had splits and drops in their dance bags, but Poopy had humor, especially when she tried to keep up with the other two. All in all, it was a very tight race, so I'd be lying if I didn't say I was sorry when it was announced that Poopy was the one to sashay away. Although, for a minute there, I thought all 4 were going to go to the finals. Seriously, here's the Poopy. She certainly didn't make it easy for anyone. So, what do you think? Did the right queen sashay? Should it have been Killer who's had her ups and downs? Or what about Sagittaria? Did being pretty get her to the finals? And now that we're at the finals, what do you think? Is it Carmen's to win? Could Killer steal it out from under her? Does Sagittaria have a chance? Well, all we can do is tune into Drag Race España next week to... Oh, well, no, that's not right. Next week is the reunion show, so we won't crown a winner for 2 weeks. Even more incentive to tune in and when you're done, you come on back and see me so you and I can compare notes. Now, don't forget to like this video if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And seriously, doing both really helps my channel grow by getting my videos seen by more people. And while you're down there, if you want to support my channel or the Rainbow Railroad, all the links are in the description box. Until next week, miss me! Mwah. Seriously, I feel bad for Poopy, but that runway was rough. God bless her and Jose. There can't be anything worse than being on a show where there's a makeover involved and you're the one getting made over and you're a size that nothing will fit on. That's the worst. I mean, I know. That's why I learned to sew. Poor Poopy. I'll bet she'll be a bit stroppy at that reunion, I'll tell you what. I'd love to see Killer win. No offense to Carmen. I think Carmen deserves it. She's worked very hard. She's done very well. But I'm always, I love an upset. I love an upset at a finale. I love it when somebody you didn't expect to win wins. That's what I loved about Sasha Velour winning Drag Race. Sadly, though, I just don't think Sagittarius is going to do it. I just don't. We'll see. Soon enough. Thank God, I need a break. Oh.